Okay. So I start off firstly with an apology to a couple of people here who were in my talk in Albania on Simchat Torah afternoon, because unfortunately for you, this is a similar, it's a repeat of the same thing, unfortunately. Unfortunately, our guest speaker today was booked for today. Unfortunately, had to pull out at the very last minute. Had something cropped up at KLBD this morning, so he had to pull out. And I didn't have a chance to find anybody else because I was away and what's going on with Israel, etc. So you've got me, unfortunately. So, well, you look at the schedule. You'll see Rabbi Khalili. He works for the Beth Din, so he had somebody cropped up at work, which people have day jobs, unfortunately. So Well, for me, I'm retired. But anyway, so I will repeat what I said then, in essence, and hopefully you'll find it of interest. As I did on Simchat Torah when I spoke in Albania, I dedicate this talk to the memory of those victims of the atrocities on Shabbat in Israel, to the refuah shlema for those who are still recovering or in hospital and what have you, and for the quick return of the hostages who are being held by the terrorists. The word is terrorists, not freedom fighter, not militants. They are terrorists. Okay, as the Prime Minister said last night. Okay, yeah, well, you could say that as well. Okay, so basically, we've just finished the Yom Tov season. Okay, on Shabbat. We started saying Mashiv Haruach, and we're now in the beginning of winter. So we've gone through a whole cycle of the Jewish year with a calendar, and we know that the calendar, the Jewish calendar. I think you need to mute yourself there, please. Whoever's in Israel, they're talking. Oh, I'll mute you. Right. Okay. Yeah. The calendar is the essence of our Jewish life. Everything we do is dictated by the calendar. Our daily activities are dictated by the calendar. The weekly activities with Shabbos and during the week and every month, etc. Everything's dictated by the Jewish calendar. And I've always been fascinated by the calendar. And that's one of my sort of pet hobbies, was looking into the Jewish calendar. I've got these books about Jewish mathematics and Jewish astrology at home, so it's a bit of a boring to some, but interesting to me anyway. We know that the civil year is counted from the Common Era, before and after a certain gentleman came around in the year 0, and that's how the civil years are counted. The Jewish years are counted from the creation. We say AM, Anno Mundi, after the Jewish year, and we sorry. Creation of man. We say Anno Mundi, actually. It says Anno Mundi means the creation of the world, years of the world. So we basically, when we count our years, our year is now 5784. In fact, we miss out the 5. So we put into Hebrew, we just say 784. Tafshin Pei Daled is 784. And to show that it is only 784, we have the initials after the year. Lamed Pei Kuf mean Lifrat Katan, means the minor counting, rather than Lifrat Gadol, which will have the big hay in front of Tafshin Pei Daled. We know how the civil calendar is calculated. It's based on the solar year, 365 and a quarter or thereabouts days every year. And the civil calendar was originally designed by Julius Caesar, and then it was recalculated by Pope Gregory in 1582, and was adopted in this country in 1752 by adding 11 days to the date in order to put the dates, make the dates the same. And what we have is we have a leap day every 4 years. If the year is divisible by 4, we have a leap day, except if it is a century year. If the century is divisible by 4, i.e. 2000, it's a leap year, but 1900 and 2100 are not leap years because the century is not divisible by 4. That is a change to the calendar put in by Pope Gregory. The Muslims have a lunar calendar of 354 days, and their festivals move back in the calendar in the solar year every year. So Ramadan can be in the summer 1 year, and in the spring another year, and go backwards and backwards. The Jewish calendar is a combination of the both. It's a combination of solar and lunar. The reason being is that our festivals have to fall in the correct season. Chag HaAviv is Pesach, Chag HaKasir is Shavuot, Chag HaSif is Sukkot. They have to be in the right season, so therefore we adapt the calendar to allow for the right season by adding a leap month 7 times in 19 years, an additional month of Adar. So I have a question for you. Those who were there on Sunday will know the answer. What is the first mitzvah given to the Jewish people? Correct, Rosh Chodesh. So a lot of people think, oh, it's Peru Ravu or Brit Milah or Gittin Hashem. It's not, it's Rosh Chodesh. The mitzvah of counting the months and setting the calendar, it was the first mitzvah given to the Jewish people. And that was set in the Parsha of Bo. So the lunar month lasts for 29 and a half days approximately. In fact, it's not 29 and a half days. It's 29 days, 12 hours, and 793 chalak. Do you know what a chalik is? A chalak. What are these chalakim? Do you know what that is? Arnie and Martin will know anyway. Yeah, there's 1,080 chalakim in a Jewish hour. 1080 parts in the hour, and that's how the time is calculated to sort of Jewish wise anyway. So 29 days, 12 hours, and 793 chalakim is the month. And in biblical times, in Talmudic times, witnesses used to come to the Sanhedrin, to the Beit Din, and actually say they saw the moon, this position in the sky, in this shape, and if they saw the moon and their testimony was accepted, then that day was declared as Rosh Chodesh, and the month only had 29 days. If they didn't come by a certain time, then that day was also Rosh Chodesh, and the next day was Rosh Chodesh. So they had a 30-day month, and that's how they used to do it. Once the new moon was sighted and confirmed, then when that happened, they used to send out messengers. They lit beacons on the mountaintops to send this message to all the outlying communities. Unfortunately, when the Jews returned from Babylon after the destruction of the temple, when they returned, unfortunately, there was a group of people in the country called the Samaritans who wanted to muck up what was going on. So they lit the beacons on the wrong day. So therefore, the Beth Din then decided to send out messengers to the outlying communities. And in those times, the communities weren't just in Israel, they were also in Babylon and Egypt, or what have you. So it took them a long time to actually reach the destination to tell them the new moon had been sighted. And therefore, those communities began to keep 2 days Yom Tov because they weren't sure what day the Yom Tov actually fell on. And that is the beginning of the idea of 2 days Yom Tov. That's a sort of thing. Anyway, and the other thing is that the leap year, a leap year was originally added. The leap month was originally added by the Beit Din based on agricultural sightings. So they used to look at how the crops were growing at the beginning of the year, and if they saw things were a bit slow, they said, well, we'll make this a leap year and add another month before we have Pesach. So they added a month in Adar. If things were moving okay, then they didn't add a month, and that was how they used to do it. However, after the destruction of the temple, after the Sanhedrin sort of that didn't function anymore, they couldn't have the sightings of the new month anymore and didn't have the witnesses. So therefore, the rabbis got together and they put together a fixed calendar. Tradition says that the calendar was fixed by Hillel II in around 350 CE, but that's not clear cut. And in fact, after the talk I gave on Sunday, someone sent me a clip, which I haven't had a chance to look at yet, which disputes that and shows that in fact it was a later phenomenon. It wasn't 350, it was actually later on when the calendar was fixed, and all the new months were actually fixed at that point for future. The leap year is 7 years in every 19 years, years 3, 6, 8, 11, 14, 17, 19, and everything is codified by the Rambam in the Mishnah Torah with all the rules of the calculations. You can determine if a year is a leap year by taking the year divided by the year we're in, divided by 19, look at the remainder. If the remainder is 3, 6, 8, 11, 14, 17, 19, then it's a leap year. So this year is a leap year. There's also some other calculations involved when they determine the year, because Rosh Hashanah cannot fall on a Sunday because if Rosh Hashanah falls on a Sunday, Hoshana Rabbah will be on a Shabbat. You can't beat the willows, so we can't have Rosh Hashanah on a Sunday. It cannot fall on a Wednesday, because then Yom Kippur will be on a Friday, and you can't have 2 days together. And it can't fall on a Friday, because Yom Kippur will be on a Sunday, and you can't have Yom Kippur either side of Shabbat. So they add a day to the year in order to make sure this doesn't happen in Rosh Hashanah. And also some other calculations they do as well. So the year is manipulated. And because of that, the Jewish year can be a what we call a chaser year, a lacking year with only 353 days, and with Kislev only having 29 days. Or it can be a regular year with Kislev 30 days and Cheshvan 29 days. So that would be 354 or 384 days. Or it can be a full year with Cheshvan and Kislev both having 30 days. So there is a bit of manipulation in the year, if need to be. So, and in fact, what they do is they actually give it's called the kafiyah, the determination of the year. There are three Hebrew letters used to determine the makeup of the year. The first letter is the day of the week Rosh Hashanah falls. The second letter determines whether it's a full year or a lacking year. And the third letter is the day of the week the Pesach falls. So this particular Jewish year, 5784, is determined as Zayin Chet Gimel. Zayin because Rosh Hashanah fell on Shabbat, the seventh day of the week. Chet because Kislev only has 29 days, it's a lacking year. And Gimel because Pesach is falling on a Tuesday. And from that three-letter designation, the fact it's a leap year, you can work out the whole calendar for the year. You can work out the Sidras, and if there's double Sidras or singles, or whatever it is, you can work out all the nuances of the year from those three letters. Now, one other fact we need to know about the calendar is that although the Jewish year starts in Tishri, we know from our Cheder days that when we count the months, we count them from Nisan, Iyar, Siv, and Tammuz. So the months are calculated from Nisan, but the year begins in Tishri. The actual names of the months that we have today were not in existence in Bible times. There were only 4 months which had a name in the Bible, and they were different names. There was a month called Aviv in the Bible, which is Nisan, obviously. There was a month called Ziv, which we now call Iyar, a month called Eitanim, which we now call Tishri, and a month called Bul, which we now call Cheshvan. They're the only 4 names of the months in the Bible. The names of the months we have today, Nisan, Iyar, Siv, and Tammuz, come from Babylon. When the Jews returned from Babylon, they came back with those names. But as I said, in the Bible, the days, the festivals are designated by months. So Pesach is in the first month of the year, Rosh Hashanah is in the 7th month of the year, and that's how the months are actually determined. So that's an insight into the calendar. The only thing I didn't mention to you, which is an important part of the calculation, is that the way they calculate now that the calendar is fixed, the mathematical calculation. Now, these rabbis who set up these calculations 2,000 years ago were great mathematicians. They knew their maths, they knew their astrology, and they knew that every month lasts for this period of 29 days, 12 hours, and 793 halakim. And it's to the fraction of the minute how long the months would last for. And what they used to do when they fix the calendar is you work out how many months there have been since the creation of the world. You multiply that by the 29 days, 12 hours, 793 halakim, and you work out from that exactly when the new month, the new moon of Tishri in any year is to be. And that's how they worked out the day of the week of Rosh Hashanah. And all these calculations were fixed it's from the Talmudic times. It's absolutely amazing. The other thing the rabbis also knew, which you may not know about, is they knew the letter pi, which we have in we use with 3 point blah 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 blah. That was in the Book of Malachim, Book of Kings. It talks about the building of the dimensions of the temple, and it talks about the circumference, radius, etc. And it comes up with this figure, approximate figure, and that is pi. That they knew about it sort of 2,500 years ago, and which we think that the Greeks invented. It wasn't. It was all in the Bible. We knew everything. We knew everything. That's amazing. The final thing I mentioned sorry, did I mention pi? Well, I may have mentioned it in the conversation to someone. Okay, sorry, I mentioned it to now. See, I thought I had something new. Just keep you awake. Right, very good. The final thing I mentioned is that I mentioned before is that because of the problem with the messengers reaching Chutz La'aretz and the fact that they didn't know what day Rosh Chodesh was, the people in Chutz La'aretz had to keep, or they began to keep 2 days of Yom Tovim in order to hedge their bets as such, because they weren't sure which day the festival actually fell on. But the rabbis then instituted it as Jewish law that if you are outside Israel, you have to keep 2 days Chag, with 2 exceptions. The one exception is Rosh Hashanah, where even in Israel, the messengers couldn't get there in time. So that even in Israel, they keep 2 days Rosh Hashanah. And the other exception is Yom Kippur, because on Yom Kippur, basically we can't fast for 2 days, so it's impossible. So therefore, we were allowed to keep another day. We only have 1 day Yom Kippur. Now, the Talmud in Beit Chagiga sets out codifies the fact that we have to keep 2 days Yom Tov. It's a religious requirement. Now, it's quite controversial, and we know that the rabbis of today, no matter how great they are, do not match up to the rabbis of the Sanhedrin. And the rule is that rabbis today cannot overturn a ruling of a previous Beis Din unless they are greater in number, greater in wisdom than they are. And the rabbis today, no matter how brilliant they are, they admit they're not as brilliant as the rabbis of the Talmud, and therefore they cannot overturn the requirement for second day Yom Tov. Second day Yom Tov is a bit of a problem. According to the strict letter of law, basically individuals from Chutz La'aretz visiting Israel, if they don't actually live in Israel, it's not their permanent home, have to keep 2 days Chag in Israel. And visitors from Israel coming to Chutz La'aretz, this is also a very controversial thing. Visitors from Israel coming to Chutz La'aretz for Pesach, for any kind of Yom Tov, they, in public, have to keep 2 days Yom Tov. So we have this phenomenon of Israelis coming to England and other places, and they are visiting their family, and they're out and about on Tiyulim on second day Yom Tov, in their cars, on their buses. It is completely contrary to Jewish law. And you get very frum visitors from Israel coming here and out and about doing what they want. The trip we were in Albania, 180 Israelis flew back to Israel on Sunday. It's completely contrary to Jewish law, unless the Israelis are self-contained by themselves with no Chutz La'aretz Jews with them. Then they could do what they want within the privacy confines of their own home, but not in public. So that is something which they tend to do. And the other, conversely, when we go to Israel, if we're not Israeli citizens, we don't own property, whatever it is, we should be keeping 2 days off. Now, I know nowadays, majority of Jews visiting Israel from Chutz La'aretz keep 1 day, and there are various rabbis around, mainly Chabad educated rabbis. We have several of them in Edgware who give a heter to their congregants to keep only 1 day in Israel, especially if they're going as a family unit to go to Israel. They go as a family, and especially if you're staying with family who are keeping 1 day. It's a bit of an anomaly to stay with your family in Israel and on second day Pesach doing a Seder on your own, basically, which some people do, which is a bit of an anomaly. So I'm not here to pass on halacha. If you want to ask a rabbi about this, go and speak to your rabbi. If you don't want to ask a rabbi, and then you can choose what you want to do. Right. So that's my fill-in talk. If anyone wants any questions, you can.
Adar chosen for the extra month because it was coming up to the springtime. Yeah, because
idea of the calendar being fixed is that Pesach should be in the springtime, and if they saw that it wasn't spring yet, they had to put the month in to push it back. So Adar was the month. Now there was a problem with this additional month, by the way. The problem was that when the rabbis fixed the month of Adar as additional month of Adar, sometimes they didn't fix it for after Purim. So they would have celebrated Purim in the first. Then the rabbi said, "No, it's another month of Adar. We had to do it all over again." That's why we have this custom of having Purim Katan and having minor Purim in Adar 1. So you look in the Bible, it says B'chodesh HaRishon, it should be Pesach, the 7th month. They refer to the months by name, by month. And that's why that is problematic, actually, because only Jewish months have numbers. And some people, some Orthodox Jews, if they are writing an English date, for example, when we used to have checks in the olden days, we're writing an English date, would not call an English month by number. So you say like 12th of January, they'll say 12 stroke JAN stroke 2003. They wouldn't write 12-1 because January is not month number one. Month number one is Nissan. So so they would not use numbers for the months.
Steve, when they
Yeah. Yeah, certain times. Yeah. Yep. Yep, in the afternoon. I know. Yep, yeah, you're right. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah, you're right. There's a lot more to it than I've actually given. I only spoke for a few minutes, but there's obviously much more to this whole business of the calendar. Let me do the bracha achrona first, and then we can you can carry on talking if you want to. There's a cup going around if you want to give give a donation for today. And again, if anyone wants to give any money towards this appeal, then by all means, I'll do it every day. But if you give me, I'll put money in. I'll send it to him every day if anybody gives me anything. Yeah. ברוך אתה אדוני מלך העולם המחיה והכלכלה והצניע והתעשייה והארץ חמד אותו ברכה ושנשיא את הביכל ואהבת לחום פנינה לטובה ברכים אנו עלינו וישומרך וישומרך ועשים משכבותיך ועוד מזדכך ויכולך בשם שמע הקודש מהר ומאיר מעלינו תוכה ושמחים בעניין ונועך וקריאה בסבלתה וברכנו אלוהי בשעה טובה כי אתה אדוני טוב מיטיב לקום דואג לך על עצמך וחצה אדוני על עצמך וחתמונה בעין נפשות all Rabbi, those on Zoom, we'll see you next week, and hopefully the guest speaker will turn up next week. Okay, have a good day. I hope keep safe. Those in Israel, keep safe. Keep safe. Yeah.